So we're nearly ready for Teesside. Our team from Teesside University to do our first seminar. I know, Richie, you've worked a lot with Catherine, haven't you, so far with stuff and the peer stuff, and that's going to be coming out soon. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, I'll just mention it briefly. So, Catherine's team won a contract from the Better Mental Health Fund from the national pot, which was about recovery for mental health. And one of the things we wanted to do this is from Middlesbrough, was to get a team to find out what peer support work is going on out there and lived experience for emotional well-being, map it and report on that, and then actually put together some training for peer support that sort of is reflective of like it's actually put together and is a reflection of the process of working with people who are peer supporters themselves. So it's been a really fantastic kind of process. There's a final report coming through quite soon. I think we'll be sharing that, and I think there's a lot of hunger from the local groups who are involved in peer support to take forward a peer support network and actually have some centralised training. And I know that there's interest from the commissioners as well to get on board. So we'll be arranging something through the Wellbeing Network, possibly in June. I think we're meeting up early before then, Kat, but we'll be arranging something. There'll be a call to action coming through the Wellbeing Network for peer support and lived experience, possibly in June, and to get all that connected up properly as well, because it's just such an important area and it's got such a fantastic evidence base behind it as well. And so, yeah, Catherine's here today with the team to talk about positive psychology. It's like this workshop around positive psychology, which is another string to Catherine's bow, as well as being involved in Saltburn. You have to remind me the full title, Catherine. You're on mute, by the way.
Saltburn Community Response is something that I do in my spare time.
As well, just in your spare time. That's right. So you're all involved in different things there as well. So should we are you ready to start the workshop off? Yeah, no problem.
So thank you so much, and we are honoured to be part of this initial launch event for such an important network. I've been really struck over the last few months of working with Richie and the team about how much they really do value that kind of idea of a network and people coming together and really driving change from the grassroots up, which is something that I'm also really passionate about. Sorry, I'm just seeing loads of things flashing up. I should apologise to my colleague Steph Kilinc, who is also doing this presentation with us, but whose name isn't on this initial slide, but it is later on. So my name's Catherine O'Neill. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work at Teesside University. I'm very interested in grassroots peer support kind of movements. I've also been involved in teaching around mental health and positive psychology. I've got my two colleagues, Steph and Mia, who are going to be doing a lot of the session for us today. Hopefully what we're going to do is give you a bit of background to positive psychology as an approach, how it differs from mental health and traditional approaches to mental health. Looking at some practical examples of how that's worked in practice. So Steph is going to talk about a tool that she developed around the management of long-term conditions that you can access and download, and then we'll have a little go at a couple of the exercises ourselves. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and hopefully that'll be something people can value. Just on the peer support, I noticed there's a few of our peer supporters that were on the training here today. We're going to be also doing a bit of an interim session on the 18th of May to 12:30 till 2:30 with the legend that is Terry Doyle, as well as some other sort of peer support that will go on. So if you want to do that, check your emails, and if you're outside of that network and you'd like to join us, please feel free to get in touch. So I'm going to hand you over to Mia now to do the first part of the session, but thank you for your attention, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Really lovely to meet you all and to be part of this. Thank you for inviting us, inviting Teesside University and colleagues. Before we start, could I ask, do I have any control over the slides, or can you pass that to me at all?
I don't know if I can. How would I do that? Any idea?
I think that there's probably a function. Maybe I'm sort of maybe
you might have to do Dr. Chris Whitty.
I might have to do a Whitty.
Yeah, I think you might have to.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, that's fine, Mia.
Oh, my favorite. Can we proceed to the next slide then, please? Thank you. Well, so as Kat said, this is going to a bit of a whirlwind tour over positive psychology and what it is. So we're really going to just touch up on the kind of the very, very briefest points possible. And it's really about developing an appreciation that positive psychology is it's an angle, it's a perspective, and it's all about the scientific study of the strengths that enable people to thrive and communities to thrive. It's founded, as it says here in this definition, on the belief that people want to lead meaningful and fulfilling lives, to cultivate what is best within themselves, and to sort of enhance their experience of love, of work, and of play. And actually, positive psychology, apart from an academic discipline, is now, as you can imagine, with those things, a bit of an industry and a sector in its own right. There's an awful lot of resources that you can find on this website. Can we please move the slide now? So, as I said, this is really an angle and a perspective, and it's about moving to what it's like to be okay and actually beyond okay. So there is this idea that happiness is not the negation of unhappiness, and getting rid of illness, rid of disorders and diseases won't in itself make us happy. So from a negative situation to take us up to the point of okay, to the point of zero, won't simply make us happy in itself. It won't make us feeling any better and feeling well. And being okay in itself does not fulfill our potential. So if I can take you down memory lane to the very kind of recent events of the pandemic, if you, like myself, found yourself in a situation where you're safe, you're at home, you're working from home, your immediate family and extended family are not in danger at this most scariest of times, when it was a different, much more scarier variant, there was no vaccine at this point, we were all okay. But at one point we started languishing. We weren't thriving. We weren't living to our full potential with meaning, with fulfillment, etc. So positive psychology is about what takes us from this point of languishing and into then the point of thriving, moving from the okay into beyond okay. So if you can sort of press the next button, please, and the next and the next, and maybe just fill up this slide. So if you imagine on a sort of spectrum, the disease model to the left and then the health model to the right, positive psychology is about the part on the right. So while in the disease model we focus on weaknesses, in the health model we focus on strengths, and in a disease model, conversely, we are overcoming deficiencies, we're looking at avoiding pain, running from unhappiness. It's exactly the opposite in the health model. It's about building competencies, building strengths, seeking pleasure, pursuing happiness. And this idea that the neutral state in the disease model, becoming okay, becoming sort of cured, I guess, is the aim of the game. In the health model, there is no ceiling. There is no ceiling to being well. You can always work on feeling better, feeling happier, etc. Can we have another press? Oh, fantastic. So this is Martin Seligman. He was up until very recently the director of the American Psychological Association, and he's a slightly controversial person as well, through all sorts of actions and things like that. But his contribution to positive psychology was that he, in 1998, sort of appreciated and realized just how necessary it is to really take psychology from this disease model and into the health model. So these are a few quotes. We have discovered that there are human strengths that act as buffers against mental illness, courage, future-mindedness, optimism, interpersonal skills, faith, work ethic, hope, honesty, perseverance, the capacity for flow and insight, to name several, to name but a few. So Martin Seligman is famous with his experiments on learned hopelessness, which underpins all of our understanding on depression. And and this is where kind of his background comes in conceptualizing this idea about learned optimism that is on the next page. And I always like to, if we can just move on, if that's all right. And I always like to call, in my own head, I always refer to this not as learned optimism, but as learned hopefulness. I really like the idea of being hopeful and living in a state of hopefulness. So that kind of learned optimism, the opposite of learned hopelessness, is about sort of supporting a strong psychological immune system. And that means that we don't not ever get sick, but just when we get sick, we're able to deal with the sickness, to deal with the illness in a more efficient, better way. And we also get sick less often. We recover more promptly, and we deal more effectively with things such as stress and things such as negative situations. Okay. So here are some of the tools of positive psychology. Then they're spectacularly low cost, very, very efficient in terms of resources and requirements. 1997, Jamie Pennebaker produced this really famous paradigm that's used throughout positive psychology and adjusted and adapted to various contexts and forms and ways. But it's all about writing. In order to gain insight, in order to gain reflection over, your own situations and your own context and life. So this particular paradigm, this particular written emotional disclosure paradigm, is about writing about the kind of most hopeless, awful, traumatic experience you've ever had in your life for no more than 20 minutes, actually, on one occasion. So people were asked to do this, to kind of write in an awful lot of detail about something that they found traumatic, difficult, harrowing, challenging, etc. And then as a control group, there's another bunch of people that were asked to write about something very trivial. And after running this experiment, it was established that further down the line, several weeks down the line, people who wrote about this traumatic experience in these really highly emotive terms ended up experiencing reduced anxiety. They not only that, so not just a change to their subjective well-being, but objectively speaking, there was a 50% drop in visits to the doctors. So their immune system and overall health improved, their general emotional well-being increased, they became more social, and that sort of thing is replicated across cultures. So it's not just a cultural thing really that's to do with kind of American people. Something like that. And then there's another version of this by Burton and King, which is about writing about intense positive experiences. Again, it's very, very similar experiment, very similar setup. So people who were ended in that condition, having to write about intense positive experiences, ended up with fewer health center visits with an enhanced positive mood. So this kind of simple writing intervention is very much about sitting down and reflecting upon events in your life, has the potential to really change objective sort of health parameters and outcomes, which I think is quite spectacular, isn't it? It's quite remarkable. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide. So why would that be then? We're wondering why would this kind of the simple act of writing and reflecting have such a profound effect on well-being? It could be linked to the fact that we process things and we engage in giving gratitude. So in the Western world, in our kind of Western cultures, this is not something that we do an awful lot of, bar a few kind of places in the world like America. But generally, we don't really ever think about giving thanks, and we maybe should think about giving thanks. So another writing intervention, another very, very similar sort of setup. McCullough and Emmons and Zhang asked students to write 3 minutes at the beginning and end of each day. So this is almost like counting your blessings, where you needed to eat write about 4 things to be grateful for, or in another group, write about 4 things that were a hassle, they were a bit of a nuisance. Write 4 things that made you feel superior, and then a control group where you can write about any sort of 4 trivial things from your day. So these people were then followed, these 4 groups were followed for 6 months up to a year, and what was found that physical health, as measured by how often they visited the doctors, but then optimism also, happiness, generous and benevolent, how generous and benevolent they were, how likely they were to achieve their goals, all of that was saw improvements. All of these parameters saw some sort of development and growth. In the hassle group, where you asked people to actively write about sort of nuisances in their day, all of these parameters were then that they diminished. People performed worse. And then the gratitude group, of course, performed the best. So again, very, very simple intervention, very, very little resource necessary, and very, very little effort in terms of participants, produced profound improvements in all sorts of outcomes. Okay, if we can move on. I thought I'd mention this theory, and that's just, as I said, because this is a whirlwind stop, we just have very little time to touch upon a few things, but this is one of the kind of the truly interesting and seminal works from positive psychology. So this is the self-determination theory. You may have seen it kind of out there, you may have encountered it, but it's all about this idea that we're self-determining beings, and that's when we're happiest. That's when we're able to be most positive. And in practice, this means a few things. So the very first one is that we act and behave in ways that are motivated. And in order to be motivated, this motivation has to come from within us. It has to be something to do with our own internal world. So intrinsic motivation is this thing that it's conceptualized as the inclination we have towards spontaneous interest, exploration, and mastery of new information. So it's things such as enjoyment of an activity, immersion in an activity. That is the intrinsic motivation that makes us engage with something more on a more longer term basis. And a few other kind of important points of this theory are around the very profound needs that we have. They're sort of fundamental human needs. So we have a need to feel competent, masterful, achieving. We have another need to be autonomous, to sort of move and act on our own accord and volition. And then we also have a need to relate and to connect to people. So those are the 3 sort of fundamental needs as self-determining beings that we experience. And when these are met, we tend to be kind of involved in these intrinsically motivated, ways of acting. Okay, and if we can move on to the next slide. And I thought I'd also mention flow, this idea about complete immersion, involvement, and focusing and concentration in an activity. That's sort of something that relates to being intrinsically motivated. So flow is something that you might have experienced when you're doing something, and then you look at the clock, and and then 5 minutes later, it's actually you realize that you've been involved in this activity for 3 hours, 4 hours or so, because it's just so gratifying. It's so completely engaging, it's so pleasant, and it's so effortless that you've been immersed in something for 4 hours when it actually felt just like 5 minutes. So flow is about this sort of sense of ecstasy, sense of removing yourself from everyday reality. It gives you a great inner clarity. It gives you kind of this idea that you're feeling very serene. You're not worrying about what's happening in your life. What am I having for tea and that sort of thing. It's really all about what you're doing. And it achieves this sense of timelessness. And that's what, that's what makes us engage with activities, and that's what makes us feel well. And that's what makes us sort of even become better at something like playing a musical instrument. So there's an awful lot more to positive psychology than flow and gratitude. There's also forgiveness. There's also compassion and self-compassion, and all sorts of thriving connectedness, things such as wisdom, things such as creativity, giftedness, what makes a person gifted. So this is what generally this is about. And I'm now going to hand over, I believe, to my colleague Steph, whose tool, oh, sorry, we have just one last slide. Sorry, it's really difficult to say where I'm at because I can't see the slides. Yes, so really, positive psychology is about conceptualizing what happiness is beyond the kind of these narrow definitions of happiness. Is all about making making yourself feel good. It's a lot more. It's about life of enjoyment, surely, but it's also a life of engagement and absorption. This idea of flow, where you're immersed in activities. And finally, it's even transcending just happiness and going into a life of meaning, where people experience a sense of purpose, by using their strengths, by using their sort of convictions to be part of something greater than themselves. And many of you may have lived experience of illness or I don't know, adversity, and you may find yourself now on the other side giving back, and you may find yourself being part of an organization like this for precisely this reason, for producing a meaningful life and producing a life of purpose. And I'm going to hand now with these words to Steph, whose tool is all about meaning and purpose as a way of managing your long-term condition.
Thanks, Mia. And thank you everyone for inviting me along today. I'd like to say as well, Mia was also involved in the development of the tool. So yeah, just very quickly, just to show you how we took those positive psychology principles and embedded them into a tool to help people self-manage long-term conditions. So we originally conducted a piece of research to explore the lived experience of self-managing a long-term condition. And we found that meaning and purpose was really key. So the things that Mia's just been talking about, having meaning and purpose in life, was central to self-management, and not just finding meaning and purpose, but maintaining it. And what we found that if we look at self-management as a lifelong process, that what gives us meaning and purpose in life can change over time, or it can be positively and negatively affected by events in our life, changes in circumstance, changes in a person's condition. So we worked with a group of people who live with long-term conditions, and took the framework and developed what we call My Life Tool, which is a small A5 booklet with 7 little booklets inside, and they're full of different positive psychology activities, a lot, based in writing about positive experiences, reflecting on your strengths. So very much a strengths-based approach, but it was developed with people who live with these conditions themselves. If you could just click the next. That's it, lovely, thank you. So 5 of the booklets are based on the 5 elements of the framework. So there's a booklet about me and my condition, which looks at how people see themselves and how that might have changed since developing their condition, if it's something that they've acquired later in life. So it's got activities that encourage people to reflect upon who they are and what they have to offer to other people, what their strengths are, and managing their expectations of themselves as well. And the second one's about embracing the body, so different activities to get people thinking about planning and pacing and conserving energy. The third one is taking charge, so that's about learning about your condition and looking at your strengths and how you can apply those strengths to overcoming future adversity. So it's about looking back and thinking, what challenges have I faced in the past? How did I overcome those? Or how could I use those resources in the future or currently at the moment, because I'm struggling with a particular element of the condition, for example. The fourth one is about connecting with other people. So it's not just about receiving support from others, but it's about supporting others themselves and how that can enhance meaning and purpose in life. And then the final booklet, what's important to me, is about finding those activities that give you meaning and purpose, where you can experience flow, where you can become immersed in the activity. And it could be something very creative. So some people that we've spoken to and that have used the tool, like poetry, or are very involved in creative activities, but it doesn't have to be that. For others, it was about spending time with their family or doing things for their family. And for some people, it was about having a reason to get out of bed in the morning, perhaps having something in the diary to meet a friend for coffee or something like that, that would mean they had to get up and get out of bed, get out of the house. So the tool is designed to be really quite flexible. You can dip in and out of it as and when you want to. It's not overly instructive. It's very open in allowing people to reflect on what works for them and what their needs are. So if we could just move to the next slide, please, I'll just show you a few pages from some of the booklets. So the coat of arms was a suggestion from one of the Stephen group members. And this is where you would sort of reflect on who you are. You can use words or you can use images if you are more creatively minded. How would you want people to see you? This is, this is your shield. This is how you're represented to the world. What do you want them to know about you? What are your strengths? What are your achievements? What are your goals for the future? What's your motto? You can put in the bottom as well. So really sort of thinking more in that the strengths and in that more positive mindset. The approach and challenges and demands is again thinking about when we might come across challenges and setbacks, but thinking about the tools we already have that we can use to help us get through. Could I have the next slide, please? Finding time for me is about breaking activities down. So it can be really daunting for any of us really to set these really long-term goals, and particularly for people with long-term conditions. So it's about thinking about what could I do just regularly, maybe 10 minutes a day or even a week, and build small and just even just having a bit of space for yourself and that sort of thing. And the glass half full is sort of those positive things that Mia was talking about there earlier, so it's sort of a spin on that really, and thinking about the things that made you feel good about yourself, and sort of looking forward how you could develop that moving forward. The next one, please. And then what we did once we developed the tool was we created a handbook for a creative program. So you could run this program face to face. It's called My Creative Life. The handbook's on our website if anyone's interested in using it. And what we wanted to do was develop some creative activities that help people reflect on their self-management. So this one, finding time for me, thinking it like a game of snakes and ladders. What are your snakes? What get in the way of finding time for yourself? And what are your ladders? What help you find time for yourself? And you could do it as a group, and even maybe contribute your own snakes and ladders to the game, and maybe play the game at the end of the session. So sort of these fun sort of activities, but that ultimately get people thinking about what gets in the way, what could they do to stop those things getting in the way moving forward. Could I have the next one, please? And then these are just some examples of the things that we've been doing. We started 2 months before the first lockdown, so we've never actually been able to complete the full programme face to face, but we did move online and we still meet every fortnight now. So these are just some of the examples of what we've created. The social system there, so thinking like a solar system, you're the sun at the centre, and the people around you in your social system, what do they offer you? So understanding, caring, fun, laughter, inspiration, those sorts of things. Next one, please. And this is just what people have told us. So we're at the minute in the middle of a large-scale evaluation of the tool, but we've been running smaller qualitative projects for the last couple of years with, as you can see in the blue box there, people with a range of different conditions, and people with mental health problems as well, so not just physical long-term conditions. And this is what they've said, particularly about the strengths-based approach and how they see it as more nurturing and less challenging than sort of looking to the negative and challenging those negative thoughts, about looking to the positive and looking to their strengths and looking forward. And because it's useful for people with a range of conditions as well, people who have multiple conditions can find it helpful to think about the different conditions and how they all interact and what they can do for their well-being in general. So that's us. Thanks. I think Kat's just said that everything's available on the website, but you can drop me an email. We do have some physical copies if you wanted to discuss that with us as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Steph. I mean, I think it's a brilliant tool, and I think just the comments in the chat are kind of a testament to how useful I think this network might find a tool like this. So perhaps we need to look into whether we can get some more printed copies available, and even if it's for a small fee, to get them out to different organisations, because I guess that, like everything that Mia said about positive psychology being beyond okay, how do we get people to really be excelling and improving their well-being rather than just reducing the effect of their mental health difficulties is going to be so important. And I guess it's really important that we kind of have a little go of this. So that's one of the things we thought we would give you an opportunity to do, is just have a bit of a taster. I know a few people have had to get off a little bit early, so that's absolutely fine. But I guess we're going to give you a try of one of the simple positive psychology exercises and give you a couple of suggestions of exercises that you can do yourself today as well, throughout the day. And just notice whether that has an effect. One thing that is stressed in the literature is that you want this to almost become a bit of a habit. So if you're starting to put in place some of these positive psychology interventions, then doing it regularly, making it as regular as brushing your teeth, when you're looking at gratitude, thinking of reflecting on things you're grateful for, or that kind of stuff, it works much better if it's something you can do a lot. So could I just have the next slide, please, Sharon? So one of the kind of exercises that Mia was talking about earlier was the idea of writing about intensely positive experiences. And so what we're going to ask you to do now, this is the first, we're just going to do this exercise and then we'll just tell you about the other two, but just so you get a little taste of it. I want you to have a think about a positive experience that you've had in your life. I remember actually doing this a while back, and when I wasn't feeling so great, and I was thinking about when I was in my early 20s, I went to Thailand, and I remember I was sitting on the beach in a little hut in a hammock, watching the sunset over the sea, and then someone in another little hut that was off to the side started gently strumming a guitar and playing a flute, and that became like a bit of a happy place for me, because it was a moment in my life where I thought, God, if you could bottle this and just have that experience whenever you wanted, it would really decrease your mental health difficulties. So so that's what we want you to do, is go back into that experience, think about the emotions you experienced, write about that in as much detail as possible, given that we've only got 12 minutes left of the session. So what I'll say is, why don't we take 4 minutes to just begin to think of that and start writing about it. What we'll do is we can mute ourselves or go off camera for this period and just take a few minutes. If you're not, I did a writing for wellbeing workshop with somebody, one of our fantastic creative writing people the other day, and they said, if you're not sure how to start writing, just start writing. So even if you don't know what to write, just start writing. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And then like even the act of writing that might get you started with writing something. So write about a positive experience. We'll come back and have a quick little bit of feedback on whether that had any impact on you, and then we'll have a look at another couple of exercises that you can do throughout the day. So yeah, so if you want to get on with that for now, that would be great, and then we'll come back in a couple of minutes. Okay, so we've only had a very brief period to kind of go and do a little bit of writing. And I know I spent probably the first minute looking for a pen as well. I don't know if that was the same for you guys. But can anyone post in the comments, anyone who did do the writing exercise? Did anything come up for you, or was there anything that it reminded you of, or did it have any impact on how you were feeling? Is everybody back? Thank you. Yeah, so Katie was just saying, thinking of one positive experience led to me thinking of many others too. Yeah, I think when I was doing it, Annette's just saying, always good to remember a nice experience. Yours was holiday based. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And it's a good reminder sometimes, I think, that, you know, often the times where we feel the most relaxed and happy isn't necessarily when we're striving for some great achievement. It's, you know, when we're being in the moment and when we don't feel like we have places to be and other places to go, we can just relax and be. Sharon was talking about getting a first at Durham. That is a very happy day, yeah, after so much work and hardship that you've probably gone through to get that. And happy events made you smile and brought positive physiological changes, so feeling more relaxed for Nicola. Yeah, and I think thanks, Nikki, for saying about once you start writing. I think sometimes that's one of the issues, is that we can feel like we don't know what to write, or we think, you know, that we get a bit blocked with writing. And that's, I really loved what they said in the our creative writing lesson, which is just start. And once you start, it just flows from you. And so many of the exercises we talked about today were around writing in the moment and trying to build positive experiences through emotional expression or through recalling positive experiences. So obviously this is just a little taste, but if it's something that you can build into your day, then that's something that can bring more positive emotions. And the research suggests that using kind of positive experiences or journaling actually increases happiness and well-being over time. And can I just have, so there's lots of people commenting in there about how they've experienced this exercise, that being immersed in something, you know, reflecting on being grateful to have been on that holiday, the day their daughter was born, excited but nervous and overwhelmed as well. So thank you for posting your experiences. Can I have the next slide, please, Sharon, if that's okay, just because I'm aware we're just a bit short on time. So thank you for sharing some of your reflections there. You can put the next slide on, please. So as we were saying earlier, another couple of exercises that you could try throughout today, just to kind of try and benefit your own well-being. In the early evening, spend a few minutes writing down some good things about your day. So in the research that Mia was talking about earlier, they had 4 good things. So if you can find 4 good things to write about at the end of each day, it doesn't take long. You can do it while you're watching the telly, but just try and take that time to think about 4 good things that happened. But then the other side of it is also keeping your eye out for the good things that are happening that day. So if you know that you're going to have to write about 4 good things at the end of the day, you can deliberately look out for those 4 good things. Maybe it's like, you know, you view out your window, because I'm stuck in the house at the moment. Maybe it's, you know, the flowers that are blossoming in your garden. Maybe it's a treasured pet, or you know, something, a family member brings you a cup of tea. These don't have to be big things, but it can be just a mindset of looking out for positivity in our lives and then making a record of that, shifting our attentional focus to things that are in the more positive realm. That's not I'm not into like toxic positivity. It's not saying that we have to, you know, block out any of the negative things as well, but it, you know, we can get very immersed in the day to day and forget to appreciate the small things in our lives, which do make a big difference. So gratitude journaling, let's have a go at that tonight. And I'll have another slide, please. We could, if you're allowed to go out, then you could do a mindful walk. I am somebody who has a very full mind, as many of us do in today's modern society. Mine is often more like that bubble on the left rather than the bubble on the right. But I guess there's another way of going out and deliberately choosing where we put our attention. And so by a mindfulness walk, it doesn't really matter what you pay attention to. It's just paying attention to things that are happening in the present moment. So just listening to the sounds that are around you. Maybe you've got a bench somewhere that you can sit, listen to the sounds of the birds, the wind, even the cars going by, people chattering, just tuning into what's around you. You can spend a minute looking at your surroundings, noticing the colours. We're in spring, life is bursting through, taking the time to do that. Maybe it'll be the sensations that you get, you know, the feeling of the breeze on your skin, or, you know, looking at the clouds and the way they move. So we can have a walk where we deliberately try and focus our attention on what's around us and paying attention to the present moment rather than everything that our mind is constantly chattering on about, basically. And what I will say is, nobody, like mindfulness, often there's a misconception that you're meant to sit there all zen and just have a blank mind. The reality is our minds are chattering monkeys and they're always going on about this stuff. So when we do mindful exercises, the aim is to deliberately try and take notice on what's happening in the present moment. And then when our mind goes off on one, like it usually does, we'll just gently, like it's some, you know, person that's, you know, a bit, we need to gently bring it back and be like, no, come on, we're doing this now. We don't want to be like, I can't do it. We want to gently bring them back to the present moment. So yeah, have a mindfulness walk, do some gratitude journaling. And could I have the final slide, please, Sharon? And that's it, basically. So this is just a taste. I'll pass you back to Sharon and Richie to finish off the session, but there's some small things that you can do that may have an impact on your wellbeing. The research suggests that it could have a positive impact. Steph's looked at this with people with long-term conditions. There's things that we can do ourselves every day just to kind of shift our mindset and focus our attention more in the present moment, more on the things we're grateful for. And it's so important, especially with all the negativity that's going on in the world at the moment, that we're able to look after our well-being. So yeah, I'll pass you back to Sharon and Richie, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thanks so much, Kat. Thanks, Steph. Thanks, Mia. That was absolutely great. It's just so lovely to hear that our well-being and our mental health is just so vital. You can't help somebody else until you've helped yourself, and I'm a big believer in that, and I think that's where we really have to come from. And those exercises that, you know, we've just been given there's something that we can all do every day, and I think that's really set off the South Tees Wellbeing Network to a great start, because it's given us that foundation of this isn't just about mental illness, this is about positive health as well. In the same way that, you know, for many years we've promoted positive physical health, it's now time to start looking at the positive mental health as well, and what can we all do on a daily basis to support that. So I think, was it Amanda there's just said she did the 3 peaks? So I just briefly saw it at the did the 3 peaks. So she's obviously a very physically healthy person, and it's what do we now do to make sure that our minds are as healthy as well. So that's it. We've come to the end of the session. So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for being so positive. Thank you all so much for your engagement. I can't emphasize this enough, that this network is about members. This is about you. It's not about me and Richie. We've got this far, but now it's for the members to take it even further again. Richie's disappeared because I believe that the emails weren't going out, so Richie's currently trying to fix that with our provider as we speak. Oh no, hang on, he's back.
Hello, back. We've just it. So anyone that's registering from this point onwards will absolutely get the welcome email. We just tested it, and there's another 92 who haven't got it, and in the next hour we're just picking it up, and we'll push that out to you. So it's no problem. Sorted. We need the glitches to understand how to get it right. Sam, it's fine, no problem.
So I think we're just about to wrap up there, Richie, because it's after 12 and people are busy and they'll be hungry now. So I just wanted to thank everybody again, and this is the start. This isn't the end. Absolutely. So we hope to see a lot more of everybody moving forward. And thank you so much for the number of people who've signed up so far. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Richie?
Not at all. Wonderful. Just very grateful to have people who are interested in this idea and are on board. So thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks ever so much, everyone. Take care now.